Mr. Pat Flynn. This is the most intimidating. If you're thinking about doing a podcast and you're thinking about who's the most intimidating person that I can have on, let me have the guy who's just like one of the legends in the podcast space on. And I told Pat before we got started, I was like, dude, this is not even, I don't call it a podcast, but like, I don't know if it's even a podcast because I don't do anything the way you're supposed to do it. I don't follow any format or structure or anything. And you said that's pretty good. So I got some good tips right out of the gate and some good feedback, which is good. But it's good to have you on the show, man.
Dude, I'm stoked. And to say that I am intimidating is super weird. That's never like, I don't know. I don't believe you. But anyway, I'm just super stoked. And anytime I can get to have a chat with somebody who I just absolutely have worked with, have had a friendship with for a while, it's always a pleasure. So thank you.
Yeah, the intimidation, I think pre-beard, I would have said, even though you're a podcast master and legend, like I'm not intimidated, but the beard is like now,
right.
Now I'm intimidated.
Well, I'm gonna keep it then because I need every edge as possible.
Awesome. So let's jump in here. When I was thinking about what can I ask Pat? Like, how can we jump into the conversation? What would be something that'd be interesting and different and selfishly, like for me, what would I find most rewarding and valuable? And that's kind of how I got all these conversations. It's very selfish. Like, what do I want to learn? And people sometimes like learning the same thing. I think there's a huge problem in our market. And when I say our market, I'm talking the info, biz op, affiliate marketing, internet marketing industry of people who want to get to here really quickly, right? They want to go from nobody knows me, I'm just trying to get started, and I want to be like Pat. I want to be like these people that are just rock stars, right? They don't understand the concept of building trust and a tribe and how long that takes. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I know anybody that I talk to that knows you, one of the things you're guaranteed to hear from everybody is Pat is just a good human being. I trust him. I like doing business with him. And I'm curious, like just at a high level, kicking off here, how did you get to that place? Like, was that a conscious decision day one that like, hey, I could take shortcuts or I can build a brand built around ethics and morals where I build a tribe, and maybe it takes longer, maybe it's slower, but I'm going to get to a point where I just have this base that just follows me anywhere because they believe what I say, they trust what I say, and they know I'm going to give them good stuff, high quality stuff, and not try to screw them over in any capacity.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a matter of seeing what was starting to work and feel good when I first got started. I got started back in 2008 helping people pass an architectural exam after I got laid off from the architecture industry. And then I built smartpassiveincome.com, which is where most people know me from. And I just started sharing anything and everything there. And it just was really interesting how quickly people took on to the fact that I was actually just doing it to help people. And there was really no other agenda. Honestly, I never really thought about Smart Passive Income being the big cash cow that it is today. Based on affiliate marketing, recommendation, now courses. We have a membership site that just came out, and books and speaking and all the things, all the above. It started out as just a way to help others because it was other people who were very genuine and honest and actually truly wanted to help me that got me started and essentially saved me after I got laid off. I got to give credit to Jason and Jeremy, the hosts of a podcast that got me started called Internet Business Mastery. This is way back 2008 days. And they were people who just told it like it was, who I knew weren't trying to consider me a credit card number, but just was sharing anything and everything. And so I really appreciated that because they shared everything and were upfront with all the things. I trusted them much quicker than anybody else. And in the world back then, I mean, it was very heavy with snake oil type salesmen and those kinds of people in the internet marketing space because people were just getting on the internet marketing space and people were being taken advantage of. And I just appreciated how honest they were. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to help others, I want to do the same thing. And this sort of nice guy thing, I just started to notice that the more I gave away, the more I leaned into helping others, the more I continued to get back. It was just kind of this really cool positive feedback loop. And although there were people and strategies and other things that were doing more black hat stuff that was working, I also knew that I wanted to do this forever. I wanted to do it for the long term. And although I might make a quick buck now, I want to be making millions of dollars continuously. And I know that building trust and building this audience, because I was on the other end of that, was very important. I also had some friends who were also starting out the same time that I was. I'm not going to mention their names, but they aren't friends anymore. I
Yeah.
saw that just what a little bit of success their way, they completely changed who they were, how they spoke to people, how they treated people, and the money or fame or whatever it was just got to their heads. And I was like, I do not want to go down that route. And I don't even know if they knew it. It's just kind of what happened. And so I've tried to put systems into place, people, friends, my wife, to just really knock me over the head if I seem to be going that direction, because I don't want to go down the dark side, if that makes sense. And again, just leaning into all the positive authenticity and transparency has always paid me back even more. So I just continue to lean into that.
Yeah, it's true, and I think the challenge is that the 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 flashy stuff from the marketing standpoint, it
Yeah.
works, right? I think that's the hard thing. A lot of people that are getting into this have is like there's something that's tried and true, and if I do it, it gets results. But doing it puts me down a path that might be at odds with who I am as a human being, right? And just my
Right.
morals and ethics. I think more importantly, and this is probably something you could speak to, is not all customers are equal. Not all members of your tribe are equal, meaning that there are people who are attracted to flash and sizzle. Their expectations are probably going to be different. What they're going to be looking for is probably going to be different. Um, the amount of money they're going to invest is probably going to be different with you than somebody that's coming into your ecosystem because they
Mhm.
genuinely like you as a human being, and they appreciate your candor and your transparency and your honesty and your ethics. And I feel like that the bond that's made there is so much tighter that they're the people that come back, and every new course you launch, every new program you launch, every new tool you launch, they're like, hey, if he's making it, like I want to buy it because I know he's not done me wrong up until now.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy what has happened. I see people like immediately after I launch a new product, they like there was no near enough time to read the sales page. Like they're already buying it because I said so. I have people reach out to me and go, "Hey Pat, this new product came out. Do you have an affiliate link? I want to make sure like I pay you back." And I'm like, "What did I do for you?" And they're like, "Oh, just everything you've done for me, right up to this point." And the fads, the fun, the sexy things that people are using to get results now, like they're working now and they're exciting and they're definitely attractive, especially because there are people who talk about these things and who are very good at talking about these things and hire copywriters to talk about these things in a way that's supposed to attract us. And it's hard because those things work right now, but they may not work forever, or things change, or it could paint you in a picture that you don't really want to be painted. But the truth is that no matter what happens, no matter what technology, no matter what happens in social or how ads work or anything, bottom line, what always has worked and will always continue to work is building authentic relationships with people, your audience, other people in your industry. That always is going to be the one common factor, no matter what happens. And what's really beautiful, and you had sort of alluded to this, is that everybody's different. So you can help people in the way that you know how to help people with your own superpower, whatever that way may be. And you're going to get back a diverse set of rewards from doing that. Your earnings are a byproduct of how well you serve your audience. I always say that. But it's not just earnings. Sometimes people pay me back because I've helped them, but they can't afford my products. But you know what? They share it with everybody.
Yeah.
Sometimes payment comes in the form of honest, genuine feedback. If they didn't care, they wouldn't take the time to send me a message and say, "Hey, I don't like how you did this. I think that doesn't represent you or your brand." And I very much appreciate that because, again, it's sort of like a support system for when I sometimes might go to the dark side. It happens, but again, I have these things in place. Feedback, rewards, earnings, sharing, support, it's all part of the entire package of what happens when you serve others first. And that's been my mantra. That's what I teach. And I even think there was a quote, I don't remember who said it, but nobody's ever been poor by helping others. Um, and so
Okay.
that's how I live, and that's what I teach.
When you started the income report, was a two-part question. One is like what was the driving factor of doing that when you did that? Because I know a lot of people do it. And two was like was part of it built around, hey, I want to establish transparency and authenticity with the people that I serve and make sure they know exactly who they're investing with, who they're learning from.
Part of it I did not approach my income report. So for those of you who are listening or watching, you might not know, for nearly a whole decade straight, every month I published an income report. Basically an inside look at my businesses and how much money I was making, where it was all coming from, down to the product, down to the penny, as well as expenses. And it was very inspirational for a lot of people. And it was something that motivated a lot of people to get started and whatnot. And when I started that, it was not a strategy for, ooh, let me see how I can build the most trust with my audience. That was the byproduct of this strategy. The strategy was, how can I best serve this audience who's looking to start a business too? Well, the best way to do it is to show people the insides of how a business was run and what is working and what is not. And that was literally, I just wanted to go, okay, here's how I do it. And you can take this information any which way you want. And I was only going to do it for a month, really, because I just wanted to go, hey, guys, like, I also know I need to show you some proof that I'm not just like blowing smoke here. Like, this is real. So here's the numbers. And people were just kind of like, wow, like, this is nobody's doing this. Although there were a couple people who sort of inspired this. It wasn't an idea I made up. In the affiliate marketing space, there was a guy named John Chow who was doing this before me. But he had an interesting tone and sort of style that kind of was sometimes condescending to people, and was definitely a strategy for him to earn more money for his products. For me, I didn't even have any products. I was just like, here, let me share it with you. And then what was also really helpful was, I was a big personal finance blog nerd. There was one personal finance blog that I was following called mymoneyblog.com. This guy was sharing all the exact stocks and the growth of his investment portfolio and how many houses he had and all that stuff. And I thought that was like the most helpful thing in the world. And so I was like, oh, why can't I do the same thing? And that's what I did. And it seemed to make a big difference for people.
Yeah, because what's interesting about that model is you found a way to, I'm trying to think of the best way to word this, to demonstrate your success without it coming off as flashy, which is really hard to do. Like, there's this very, very thin line in our industry of demonstrating that you're actually successful, right? Because you need to prove that you actually do what you teach and you've been successful with it,
Mm-hmm.
without being showy or flashy or seeming materialistic. And that income report is just a great balance, because it's not like showing things. It's not like, here's the things I've acquired. It's just like, here's my business, here's what we make, here's what we spend, and you can review it, and here's a write-up of what we did this month. And it's like that perfect balance to accomplish a job you wanted to accomplish without really the negatives that come with doing it another way.
Thank you. And I did see, after just a few months, people saying this was so inspirational, and thank you for not just being the guy in front of the mansion with the cars, right? Which is what everybody was seeing at the time. And it took me a couple months, but I started to realize that that was my differentiator. I then turned this into a strategy for the purpose of building trust, once I learned that it was actually working to do just that, like I said, as a byproduct of wanting to help people. And then I leaned into it. Then on the website for a while, I said, literally straight up, I am not a millionaire. I'm here to just show you how things work. And people really resonated with that. Then I had my firstborn, and I put a picture of me and him on the homepage and said, I do this for family. Other people do it for travel, for riches and fames. This is my why. And I found a whole group of people who were like, oh, thankfully somebody's doing this for the right reasons. And then again, I leaned into it. I used to make a joke that my Lamborghini was a 2012 Toyota Sienna, which is a soccer mom van. And of course, the business continued to grow. And then I surpassed that $1 million mark, so I had to take that out. Kids grew a little bit older. And of course, now my advantage was not that I was just starting out, but that I was a seasoned entrepreneur still in it with them. Meaning, what I then did to showcase the knowledge and to also open up transparency again, because my business, Smart Passive Income, and my architecture business was actually performing so well. It was actually putting some people down. It was like, oh, well, you must just be this genius who can do this, and I can't do this. Like, look at how big those numbers are. I can never reach that. So that's when in 2012, 2013, I started to create new businesses publicly on the blog, and just going, okay, you know what, like you feel very far removed from me for now. Like, let me come back down and let's actually build something from scratch here together. And so, hey, I'm going to pick a keyword research tool to use, and I'm going to find a keyword that's going to give me an opportunity to build a website and a business out of it. And I'm just going to show you exactly how I do this. So I did that. And in 73 days, I was able to get a brand new website up and #1 on Google and making money. And this website was called securityguardtraininghq.com. Security guard training was the keyword. And I found a giant hole in this space using keyword research that nobody was helping people learn how to become a security guard. Also, guess what? I'm not a security guard myself. So this gave so many people inspiration to be able to create something simple, following my process, following along a real case study, which was out there for free. And the cool thing about this was, however many steps there were, like step 3 was keyword research. You could do it the long, hard way, or here's a keyword research tool that I use. By the way, click on the link because I get an affiliate commission if you go through that. And those affiliate commissions just exploded. I mean, I was making $60,000, $70,000 a month now by just recommending things that I was already using, by sharing everything for free again. And that was like the craziest part about this, is it's just like the more information I give away for free and the more I go, oh, this tool can help you. Oh, and this tool can help you. And here are my results. People were like, oh man, like let's just do what Pat's doing. And so many people started businesses as a result of those strategies. I started another one called Food Trucker in 2014, which took off and later got sold too. Both of those businesses, in fact, got sold. I also shared some journeys of the app business that I had. I started an iPhone app business. We made over $1 million in that business, and then it kind of crumbled because it started to get really saturated. But again, same thing. I started to share how it was done in the tools that we were using, and that was helping me make more money too. Lately, my latest project, because this is what's working best, because not only do I share how well things go, people love to see when I fail. That's the other thing I've realized. And that's another big thing that's differentiated me in the space too. It's like, even in the income reports, like, hey, this month we're down like 25%. Like something's not working. Here's what my hypothesis is. Here's what I'm learning. Here's what I think we could do better. People love to go, oh, that didn't work out like you thought, didn't it? And I go, yeah, you're right. Let's see if we can figure it out. And again, they feel like they're sort of in the business with me. My current project is a physical product called the Switch Pod. My videographer and I, we invented this tripod for vloggers, and it's exploding now. We raised nearly $500,000 on Kickstarter, and we've shared every bit of the process along the way. And now we are making a name for ourselves in the video space because, again, same process. We're sharing the journey along the way. So we're not a company creating a product that is trying to sell people like the Gorilla Pod or all these other video companies. We're just people like them who are just wanting to solve a problem, and they become a part of the story too, and they want to support us. I mean, this is how we raised over $100,000 in 11 hours on the day we launched. Taking people in on the process is like my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, and sharing the fails is really interesting, and I think more people need to do that. I think just across the board, regardless of whether it makes you more money or makes you more successful as a strategy, just to realign expectations with people getting into the industry, because right now it's, and Hoki wants to come up here. She wants to join us. Come on. She wasn't going away if I wasn't going to pick her up, so she's going to be up here. But people only share the good stuff, right? Like nobody in our industry, when they launch a new store, a new product that loses a ton of cash, are going to be live streaming that and showing off like, hey, I just lost $100,000, or hey, I just launched this Facebook ad campaign, it was a total bomb, or this offer totally bombed, or this week's been a really rough week for me mentally and I've been out of it, I haven't done any work. Like people share the best parts of their life, and this isn't just business, this is just across the board of social media right now. Is any human being can take a snippet of their year and stretch it out, and that is what people see every day. It seems like every day is a vacation, every day is this amazing journey, and it's really damaging to most people that don't already understand what's happening behind the scenes. Because most people they're not entrepreneurs, they haven't gone through the journey, so they just see what other people that they think are successful are sharing. And I've been thinking of ways of like how to do more of that with our own stuff, but also how to push others to do more of that, to share more failures, to be more vulnerable, because I think you'll selfishly benefit from it because it builds authenticity and all the things you talked about, but also just for like the social good, for like the good of entrepreneurs and people getting into the industry and just humans. I think there needs to be so much more of that. It's like, it worries me about, and this is going down a rabbit hole here, like as somebody who has a kid and as somebody that's now going to have a kid, like it does worry me just how filtered, edited every moment of every day is, and how these algorithms are getting so good at showing you exactly what they think you want to see. It's scary. It's scary that there's no longer a reality anymore. It's like a perceived reality becomes the new normal, the new reality. And I don't know how you fix it. Like it's something I think about a lot.
No, it's really important, especially if you have kids, and now things are going to get even more technological. I mean, there's a Netflix documentary called Social Dilemma
Yep.
that if you haven't seen, I'd highly recommend, because it talks and speaks to just this problem and this other pandemic that's going around, which is this these social tools that are supposed to bring us closer together are actually making us feel more disconnected. They're actually making us depressed. They're leading to suicide in many cases, and that's terrible. Um, I once read where in Japan, when they make these Japanese Zen gardens, like they always purposefully put a weed here or there, because then it would be too perfect, and that's
Yeah.
not real, right? So I think in our businesses we can add a couple weeds here and there, and that's now something I purposefully do. If I look at my archive and I'm like, oh, we've only been talking about success stories this whole time, we haven't talked about mistakes or failures. We gotta talk about that, because that is a real side of it. And unfortunately, what is happening is we as humans, we're comparing our overall life to other people's highlight reels. And like you said, we're only seeing a little snippet. So where in comparison is a killer for sure. Where I choose to compare is I want to compare myself to myself yesterday, to myself last week, to myself last year. Am I making improvements? Am I developing personally? Am I becoming a better father? Am I becoming a better husband, etc.? That's what I want to compare against, versus, oh, that person there who's choosing to take that snippet of their life and share it for us. How might I feel about that? So sometimes I really regulate what information or what social streams come my way, because once you see it, it's hard to unsee it.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. So what drive like it's a question that I ask a lot of my more successful friends. It's like, what gets you out of bed on a daily basis? What keeps you going, pushing forward? Because at a certain point, we all hit something where it's like, okay, that kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I really don't need anything else, right? We don't need anything additional. There's nothing more that we could really add tangibly, like thing wise, to our life that's going to dramatically improve it in any way. It's going to improve our happiness. It's like marginal increases for a short period of time. So there has to be a bigger why and a bigger purpose. Otherwise, you're just kind of drifting along to the next thing that you can buy, or, financial accomplishment.
Yeah, for me, I think about this phrase, and that is, I am an example. Meaning, how I live my life, what I do, is seen by others,
Yep.
and could potentially affect their lives as well. And that to me is responsibility, and enough for me to get up and create and help others. It happens with my audience. When I create for my audience, I see the response back, and I can know that I'm providing value and helping other people live their fullest life too. And again, continuing to just pay it forward. But also, and even more important to me, are the little ones that I have running around the house. They see what I do every day, because we are all in the house, especially even now, they're doing school at home. And so to just sit there and do nothing and be complacent, that's not being a great example for them to continue to achieve higher, to continue to help others, to continue to find new and innovative ways to keep yourself busy, to stay healthy, because I think staying busy is important, but obviously a lot of people are staying busy with things that don't necessarily make them happy. And now for me, it's not about money, it's about happiness. How can I be the most happy every single day? And to me, that starts right in the morning with the routine, to journaling, to a little bit of meditation, to being with the kids, to going out in the garden. Like all these things, I'm finding more and more happiness, and I'm choosing to sort of remove the things that are making me less happy, i.e., a ton of social media, um, where I don't have as much control. And again, being that example for the kids, and letting them in on my process too. They know why I do it. They knew who I was interviewing right now, because I tell them in the beginning of the day what my schedule is, because it's only fair. They're telling me what their schedule is. And so I go, I'm doing this interview with Max. He used to help me with ads, and he helped us make a lot of money too. So I want to give back to him and his audience. And that's why I'm here today, because I want to help him in whichever way I could best serve his audience. And they go, oh, really cool. Good luck. Right. Or when I go to speak somewhere at a conference, I'm going away for a few days. I don't want them to think that work means I'm leaving them. Work means I get to serve other people. And I want to train them in that way by leading by example again.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how do you, something I've struggled with, and you might struggle with or have figure out a solution to it or have advice for me on this, is if you try to, I'm not naturally a social person. Like I'm not naturally the person, like if I didn't do what I did on the info product business side, I probably would post on social media like once a month. Right, like I'd probably make like one post and it would be a picture of our Yorkie and our dogs and my wife and I, right? But the name of the game is like you obviously can't, you know, sell education and info and stuff if nobody knows who you are and you don't share value and all that stuff. So it's this constant dilemma that I'm dealing with where I have to post, I have to consume because I have to be up to date, I have to know what's going on, I have to see trends and be able to discuss them and get all that kind of prompts.
Sure.
But I also don't want to get over consumed by it, right? Because it's hard to control. It's not like you can. It's an addictive thing, so it's not like you can go into it halfway and say like I'm just going to use it for business and I'm just going to do it for this amount of time each day. It's playing that game of half in half out is very very challenging. Like it's you're in for business but you're out for personal. And I'm curious, like if you struggle with that, and if you don't anymore, like what did you do to balance those two things so it's
I
more
mean,
business?
yeah, I mean, on the social side of things, when we're talking about social media apps, Instagram, Facebook, et cetera, where we kind of need to be present in order to be seen, or else, if you're a business but you're not seen, you're not selling, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to kind of show up. But I don't show up there and put my business cap on. I show up there and I'm just me. And I am some business, I am some personal. And you'll see me on my Instagram, like, for example, there's so many pictures of the kids and my family and legit growing microgreens in my garage, just because it's something that's a part of me right now. But at the same time, if I'm launching something, that's a big part of me right now too. So it's just who I am showing up regularly. So I do put it in my calendar. I spend about 15 to 20 minutes a day on social, to be on social specifically. And that's my control factor. It's the container of time that I allow myself to be on there. And I have to honor that time, because I know that if I get in some sort of YouTube or Facebook, Instagram rabbit hole, that's also time that I'm taking away from either A, my team and other responsibilities that I have, B, other ideas that I could come up with and vision casting, or C, my family. And so I have to play in social for business, but I also know that I have to take myself away, and that comes with time constraint as well as a physical constraint as well here in the house. Like, this is my office for doing business. When I'm out of the office, I'm not doing business. And that also helps me. I need that help. I need that sort of those boundaries. Many people are way more disciplined than I am. So part of this is knowing who you are and what triggers you and how you work best and how you don't work best, and setting yourself up and setting your environment up for that success to best support the kind of person you are. So it's hard for me to go, oh, do this or do that. You kind of have to find out what works and what doesn't for you. Just like a diet, like not everybody's on keto or works on keto. Not everybody works on the whatever diet is new, but you kind of have to figure out how your body does what it does and then work with that.
That's good advice. I think the structured environments makes a lot of sense and helps. The challenge is it used to be easier when, we still have an office downtown, but like when you go to the office and you leave the office, there's a physical separation. You're
Right.
turning off and you're going somewhere else. I think a lot of people are struggling with that now of like, I'm
100%.
working, living in the same place, and I don't know how to handle it. Like I can't put that line down because I'm in the office. The kids are coming to the office, and it's this weird time in this weird place where people are having to mix those two elements, and they're now just like blended together. And so making the time becomes much more difficult, and it takes much more effort to set those boundaries up because there's not really any physical boundaries anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it gets really tough when you have young kids for sure who don't really understand those boundaries or will honor them for you if you even are very adamant about what they are and when things happen. But it part of being an entrepreneur and being a business owner and just being a human really is about adaptation.
Yeah.
It's about rolling with the punches and again continually trying to work things out, especially with other people around you. Now, if you have super young kids, it might not be easy to chat with them. Thankfully, my kids are a little bit older now, 10 and 7, or excuse me, 10 and 8. My gosh. But if you have a spouse or a partner at home with you, having them understand when you need your time, that has helped so much. April and I April's my wife, we've had several conversations about when we need each other for each other. So, hey, I have a launch coming up in the next couple weeks. That means you're going to be spending a little bit more time with the kids, but just this is why that's important. And then, of course, she can come back to me at any time and go, hey, well, I'm feeling very overwhelmed during this time. Might I be able to have a week sort of just off from the kids, and can you take them at this time? So it takes communication, it takes understanding, and getting some support from immediate family can be very helpful, obviously, to find time and space to do things. But at the same time, I think this also can be beneficial in a way, this sort of craziness that we're living in right now. This can be beneficial because now with limited time, now with limited space, now with just craziness, we can make sure that we're only working on the things that we should be working on. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise because, and I know this happened when I had a kid. I know you're going to have a kid very soon, but in fact, having a kid was the most productive, like that was the best productivity strategy I've ever had. Now, I'm not saying like if you want to be productive, go have kids. That's a different kind of productivity. But what I'm saying is when you have something so important that deserves as much time from you as possible, then you're going to make sure that when you need to do work, that you're going to make sure that work time is worth your time. So I was able to cut out like 50, 60% of the things I was doing because I was either finally learning how to delegate or just taking away things that weren't actually necessary and realizing that I had a Pareto's rule in my business. 20% of the stuff I was doing was making 80% of the income. Well, let's do more of that. And that took a lot of additional time away from things that I didn't actually need to do so I can focus more on family or, at least have, more done in a shorter period of time.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times over the last few weeks about like having the kid really increases your productivity out of necessity. You adapt very, very fast because you have to.
Right.
I'm curious. We're talking about long-term goals and why you do what you do. With the business that you've built, specifically Smart Passive Income, and on the course side and the info side, how do you envision, and just like recommendation as well for people that are kind of following in those footsteps in the info business, you being able to exit or step away from that business one day? That's one of the things I've thought a lot about is if you build a personal brand and a business that's interlinked with that personal brand, it becomes difficult if you 5 years from now, 10 years from now say like, I'm just not passionate about this anymore. Like I don't want to do courses. Like I want to do something different. Being able to, obviously you could just like wind it down, right? But being able to actually exit it and have some type of positive outcome financially from that. I'm just curious if you've thought about that at all.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you want a financially positive outcome, i.e. an exit of some sort, then you're going to have to somehow separate yourself from the brand most of the time. We've seen people like Dale Carnegie, obviously, who his name still lives on even after him to help others. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to fully remove yourself. And plus there's people like Dave Ramsey who have now coaches who teach the Dave Ramsey thing to others. And that again alleviates Dave's time, but obviously he's still involved in that business of his. And it's a very personal brand, but other people are using his proprietary information to spread that word for them. So certifications, trainings, that can help you scale. And perhaps there could be somebody who is a star within that who can step up and become CEO so that you can step down similar to what Clay Collins did at Lead Pages. He kind of stepped down from CEO, brought somebody else in, and then he's just on the board now, so he could focus on something else. So that is still possible. But for me, if I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm done with that and I want to move on to something else, well, then definitely if you have a personal brand, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have your name in the domain name. Like
Yeah.
Smart Passive Income for the longest time was Pat Flynn, right? But what I've been doing is I have been building my team and featuring and highlighting more of those team members and their superpowers. It's almost now like I was Iron Man, and Iron Man was like the first movie in the Avengers, but now there's Black Widow and Hulk and Captain America. There's all these other team members of mine who we're all the Avengers now. So even if Iron Man were to go away, then the Avengers would still live on, right? And so the long-term goals that I have are to eventually get to that point where SPI is known as having an amazing leadership team, once started by Pat Flynn, but Pat Flynn recruited other team members who could do something similar or even better than him. And now that crew is taking care of all those people there, such that Pat is now, or I am now, and this has already started, by the way, in my own personal brand, doing a lot of these other bigger legacy goals that I have. Because every business I've created is sort of a stepping stone into the next phase of life. And what I mean by this is already happening is my team members have showed up on SPI. We redesigned the website, and we have now featured more of them. They are taking ownership in more of the business. They are stepping up to provide value and add content. They have roles and responsibilities within things that are within SPI that I have nothing to do with, and that's really cool. And at the same time, I'm working less and less in the business. I'm still sort of the face of and the major talent there, if you want to call it that, but they're stepping up too, which is pretty cool. I now have patflynn.com and a separate business that is there. So SPI Media is its own company now. Flindustries, my original company, is what I still own, and that's where my speaking, my workshops, anything that's just me only I can do, will live there. And eventually I want to take that to the point where that becomes a stepping stool to my legacy goals. And I don't know if you've read Walter Isaacson's Benjamin Franklin biography or any of Walter Isaacson's stuff. I mean, they're huge.
Amazing, yeah.
In Ben Franklin's biography, I think it's like 700 pages or something ridiculous, right?
Massive.
At page 60, Ben Franklin's already 40 years old. All the stuff that we know Ben Franklin for happened in the 640 pages after he was 40 years old. And I'm turning 38 this year, and I have so much more to give and so many more things that I want to be remembered for. And my goal is to help make an impact in the world of education. And because I have kids now and they go to a very entrepreneurial school, I've seen what it's done for them in their mind and how important that is for the future. And with AI and robots coming, like soft skills, entrepreneurial type skills are going to be so important. Whether you become an entrepreneur or not, doesn't matter. But those skills, the soft skills, learning how to learn from failures, learning how to collaborate, learning how to share ideas, present, etc. These are going to be so important. I want to teach kids how to learn those things. I want to have schools have entrepreneurship as a subject, much like reading, science, math, entrepreneurship. I really, truly believe that would help solve a lot of problems for our future and set everything up for success as we move into the next era here. And I'm already starting to do this. I'm on the board of Pencils of Promise and several other places where I have connections with people in the education space. And I'm writing a book about this topic. And this is very much a personal thing for me. And that's why it's separated now from SPI. But they, of course, cross-pollinate. And this is now where I want to step into as I get into my 40s. And I'm really excited about it. And so far, people are willing to offer support even already for where I think things are headed. And I think we all know education's sort of broken right now anyway. So, and it's changing right now as we speak because of COVID. So, I mean, it's a prime opportunity, I think.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time for education because it's needed to be dramatically rethought and restructured, but it's incredibly difficult to restructure and make dramatic changes to massive institutions that are moving along full steam ahead, even though they might be kind of broken. So what's happening now, could give an opportunity because it's forced change, it's
Exactly.
forced behavioral changes, and now things need to be redone anyway. So why not begin to redo things in a better way? I mean, entrepreneurship education is huge for me. It's, you know, I initially went to a college because it was the best school I could get into. I went to a private high school, and you apply to 20 schools. You apply to Harvard, Princeton, like top Ivy, then another 15 schools. So I went to Emory in Atlanta, and I went to their business school, and that was number 3 or number 4 business school. Yeah, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated it. It was all TAs. It was you're paying a ton of money to be taught by 22-year-old. And then I transferred to Babson College. Actually, I think this week they just got recognized for the 24th year in a row the number one entrepreneurship school. And that's like all they do. It's entrepreneurship. So every class is built around casework. It's all real world. And the education I got in those 2 years, the stuff I learned was more valuable than my entire like academic career, like the stuff that I do today. But it happened at college, right? It's like you're thinking, I'm sure, if you can bring those skills to kids when they're in their formative learning years, when they're getting started, I mean, that's game changing. They don't have to be entrepreneurs, but just the way they look at the world, the way they approach problems, that skill set is so useful.
Real world applications. I mean, I'm imagining a lot more mentorship type stuff happening, apprenticeship type stuff happening, how it was in the olden days, right? Like, you want to be a blacksmith, you go learn from a blacksmith instead of read about it all day and sort of like take tests on it and whatnot. You do it. Doing is education. Even in this environment, have already seen some massive changes in my kids based on learning from home. And it's really interesting because, at school, there's like a bell. At this time, you go to this class. At this time, it's recess, and it's like you just follow the schedule. And what I've really noticed, even just now, because they have Zoom calls now, right, at home, but they don't want an 8-hour-long Zoom call. So there's various Zoom calls during the day and little group sessions and a lot of breaks, in fact, which is great. We don't want them in front of the screen the entire time. By the way, blue blocker glasses, I think, are going to be an important investment if you have kids on screens all day now. Anyway. I've noticed that the kids are getting really good at managing their time. They've never been forced to like schedule things and have to show up because they were always just told to go when the bell rings. So now I see them paying attention to the clock. I see them going, oh, I have 5 minutes left. I probably should get ready now. Like, that is such a huge skill that kind of many people learn in college, because that's the time you finally have classes that you need to show up at versus just being led and following others all day long. So like little things like that are like, wow, like some of this change is already happening forcefully, and that is good. There's obviously terrible things happening, but that's like a little cool micro thing that I think is coming out of this for at least my kids. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think what we're seeing now is a adoption and innovation curve that typically would take decades or more to happen. There were inevitable things that were going to happen, now happening in a matter of months. Like you see on e-com, right? Just this massive boom of adoption. People doing, food delivery more than they were ever going to do. People shopping online more than they were going to do because they were forced to do it, and it becomes a habit because they're forced to do it. It's amazing what happens when you're required to do something every day. It develops a habit out of force, which is
Right.
again, it's all bad reasons why this is happening, but I think that the silver lining is that there could be some positives that do come out of this in just restructuring outdated and ineffective institutions. And yeah, I think education is going to be a really big one, which is exciting.
It's funny what happens when you have to do something, right? It's like, too many of us are complacent and just living a life, but not really feeling like we have to change anything. And I think there could be ways that we could all improve in that. I mean, when I got laid off, I had to make something work, and I took actions and did bold things that I would have never done. And I promise you, if I wasn't laid off, I wouldn't be what I'm doing today and who I am, and be able to spend as much time with the kids or affect other people's lives. And yeah, I love what you said about e-commerce. I mean, there's so many new things coming out now and trends that have always been around that are now sort of surfacing. I bought Etsy stock when the pandemic happened because I just knew, like you said, e-commerce and people selling online, like that's where people are headed. And that has increased, I think, 60% since I bought. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of ways to take advantage of sort of the opportunities that are here now, even though things are quite dire for many.
Yeah. So opportunity wise, let's talk about another big big booming area, which is podcasting, which is an area that you are an expert in and have been involved in before it became a big thing. You've been in the game for a long time in podcasting.
Yeah.
What are your, just no like specific question, but just curious, like overall thoughts on the podcasting industry, seeing now what's happening with Rogan and these big producers who now you have Spotify, you have Apple, you have all these companies that are realizing like this is a content play. Like we're it's just like movie studios, TV networks, and it's interesting seeing. I think it's for me, and I don't know, I could be wrong here, but it seems like what's happening now is the first clear path of like how an influencer or individual brand could actually have a significant exit, right? As a content creator, is this these new acquisition plays by the media companies? I think like Warner bought like a meme company a few weeks ago. I forget the name of the company, for like $85 million, something like that. So you're having all these content producers who like throughout history have never been able, unless you go write a script for Hollywood or something, like you weren't going to make a lot of money out of it, now have the opportunity to turn their content libraries and audiences into a serious business. Not everyone's going to do $100 million deal with Spotify, but being able to sell your channel for $5 million, $10 million, $20 million. It's a very interesting time seeing it from the outside, because I'm not a big podcaster. I haven't done it for a long time, but just watching what's happening is very interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of money being put into the podcasting space right now. A lot of companies are noticing the new opportunities that are available. A lot of advertising is happening on the space as well, primarily because it's the habit by which listeners absorb the content. If you think about it, a blog post might be read for 10 minutes and then the person's gone, right? Maybe. Yeah. On a YouTube video, like 5 minutes, and you're doing really well. Social media posts, like literally 1 minute and they're out. A podcast, people can sit and listen for 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of content in a person's head. You can't help but build a relationship. You can't help but affect lives. You can't help but share a message within that period of time. And you get these raving fans listening to your podcast, comparable to super raving fans that you might get on YouTube if you have sort of a daily vlog. It's kind of amazing. And I don't want to say that like you start a podcast, you're going to make a ton of money. There's work, but there's definitely a lot of companies looking for this content play, and podcasting is definitely the it thing right now. Seth Godin recently said that podcasting is the new blogging. And we remember when blogging was kicking off and how big of an opportunity that was, and how much Yahoo and other media companies and outlets were sort of putting a lot of time and attention to it. And then of course now it's become saturated, and now podcasting is coming into play, and I'm guessing it's going to follow the same path, but it is a little bit different for sure. And what we're seeing now is a lot of companies like Gimlet Media having multiple podcasts under one network that then gets sold because they have this worldwide audience, this giant number. And in fact, this is what we're doing. I have 2 podcasts. My team and I are going to start a few more, and we're going to start recruiting, potentially even acquiring other podcasts to build this network of entrepreneurial-based and personal development-based podcasts to see what happens, because we see the opportunity here too. It's going to take some work for sure, but I know some individual podcasters. I have a student of mine in my podcasting course. Her name is Sophie Walker, just a mom who was like, you know what? I want to start a podcast and interview other moms about their birthing story. And she started a podcast called Australian Birth Stories, and it shot up to #1 in kids and family in Australia. She has over 6 million downloads now. It's her full-time business. And in fact, a lot of Australian organizations require them to listen to her show for additional earning credits or whatever it is. It's like one person out of her home has done this. So I'm not saying you have to create a whole giant conglomerate or a company or a network. You can be an individual and still do really well too, because advertisers are seeing how well these listeners convert, because it's the authenticity and the trust that the listener earns, or that the host earns from those people who are listening. But it's really, the Joe Rogan deal, that speaks to the idea of video podcasting as well, and just Spotify. Google. I will say that there are still a lot of struggles in the podcasting space. Findability is terrible. It's not like YouTube where you can create a podcast and all of a sudden like you have millions of people who can find it. Word of mouth is definitely still a big play here, and that takes creating content that's worth sharing via word of mouth. There is now finally Google and even Spotify stepping up to enhance the search engine game related to podcasts, but still we're far away. So I still think we're in the early days, the wild, wild west of podcasting, even though it's been around since the late 90s. That was just for the super nerds who knew how to code audio into blog post RSS feeds. Now celebrities are coming on. Michelle Obama's going to have her own podcast on Spotify, like huge names. And I love that, because what happens is now more and more people are going to find podcasting for the first time. And on average, people are subscribed to 7+ shows. So if you have a podcast with everybody else bringing new podcast listeners in, you could likely be found and grow your brand, grow your network, potentially have a nice exit one day too.
Yeah, one thing I wonder about with podcasts, and this is like, I'm trying to the best way to word this. Like, what do you think makes a podcast stand out? Because if you look like from like a bird's eye view, and you just look at a lot of the podcasts. Now, I'm not talking. There's obviously like there's really well produced ones that are like the Crime Junkies and things like that. Are like they're almost like productions. They're like movies and TV shows. Like that's super unique and special. But most people can't do that. I mean, you could, but it's a lot more effort and time investment, everything. But it feels like a lot are interviews. What we're doing right here. What is it you think that makes it different? Right? Like there's tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of podcasts out. I don't know the number. I'm just making that up. And they consist of two people sitting down talking. It's just fascinating to me that like for whatever reason, and you might have the reason, people just say like, I want to listen to this person talk to another person. But like all these people over here talking to people, like nothing. I don't really care.
Yeah, it's weird, right? It's like, but I mean, talk shows have been around for a long time, obviously. Radio shows, interviews. I mean, these aren't anything new. It's just in a new format now. But what I truly believe is something that can help you stand out or become successful whilst everybody else is doing this too is the stories. Get the stories. The story is everything. Because a story, if it relates to the person who's listening, is relatable. It can be informational. It can be inspiring. It can produce an emotion. And when you can do those things, when you can even just produce one emotion, laughter, joy, pain, something, you make a connection. That's a new conduit that's formed that this person's going to want to continue to come back for, because relatability is what we as human beings want. We want to feel a sense of belonging. And this is why when people come to me and they're like, ooh, I want to start a fitness podcast. I'm like, tell me more. Well, I want to help people lose weight. I'm like, okay, you and so does everybody else in the fitness space. Like, what is it about your story? Oh, well, I almost committed suicide because I was picked on so much. And okay, now we're getting somewhere, because now there's a story, there's a reason why we need to help people lose weight versus just lose weight. Now you can get into the individual. Maybe every interview is somebody who was almost at the end of their life as a result of their weight and being bullied and whatnot. And you surface those stories, and now other people whose lives might end need you to show up so that they know other people are going through this too, and that they're not alone, and that they can get out of it too. Why don't we focus in that niche? And that's like, wow, that was literally a conversation I had with somebody, and she's still in the middle of creating her show. But I mean, it was like, now the podcast had purpose. Now it wasn't just, one person interviewing another. It was pulling out the story to help others who might be living and going through that same exact moment too. And it's the language that you use in and amongst that problem and pain. It's the niche that you're in. It doesn't always have to be depressing, obviously. Yeah. Maybe you're interviewing people who are over 60, retired, empty nesters. That's your niche. But their journey running their first marathon. And you're helping people run, but you're focusing on older people, and you also have programs and you have clients. And yeah, but you're on your podcast pulling out these stories, these journeys of people. It's really, that's what sells. It's the story. Think about any good movie. It goes through that hero's journey. And that's what we need to be focusing on in the podcasting space, but really any kind of content should be focusing more on that story. And if you happen to be selling anything, go to your customer base, go to your students, pull out their stories, because very much like what Donald Miller says from StoryBrand, they're going to do a much better job selling your stuff than you could ever, because they are a version of your prospect, just a couple steps ahead. So it's the story, man. That's really what it's about.
I love it. That's awesome stuff, and we can. I think it's a strong note to wrap it on. I want to be respectful of your time, but before I let you go, I know you have so many amazing programs. There's so many resources. You're such a giver, and when we worked together for 2 years or so, helping start the ads and everything for all the programs, and like I'll tell you this is just one little story here, and then I'll let you pitch whatever you want to pitch,
Thanks.
and we can go. Like it's probably 2.5 years ago. Jeremy and I started Unicorn. We kind of branched off from what we were doing with Kevin, and Pat was pretty much our first client, really, our first offer. He had just launched I think it was Power Up Podcasting. I think it was the first program, and running ads for that was probably the single easiest offer that I've ever to this day run ads for. Like every launch we did, it was like, this is amazing. Like we just kept getting great results. And I think it's a testament to how much you give, because up until then you really hadn't like sold your audience anything. You weren't pitching anything. You just built value, built trust for weeks, months, years. And I'll just never forget like the response. I'll never forget how big that first week was. We had no expectations going into it. We were like, let's maybe do well. And it was just amazing results, revenue-wise, profit-wise, but also just the comments on the ads. It's very unusual when you run ads, especially for info, where the comments are even over 50% positive. Usually like that's your goals. Like at least 50% aren't mean and awful. And it was just like every comment was just like, Pat's awesome. I love Pat. It was just amazing. I think it's just something it's always stuck with me. And that was before we really got into info. So I've kind of used that as a model for everything we do, of like giving, because it makes the media buyer's job, it makes the actual marketing and advertising of a program you want to sell exponentially easier if you have the foresight to give in advance of knowing you're going to monetize. The reason I say that is because you now have a lot of great programs and you have a lot of free resources. You have all these checklists and cheat sheets and amazing things. So best place for people to go that are looking to get into affiliate marketing, entrepreneurship, podcasting, all things that they can learn from you.
Yeah, I mean, we have everything up on smartpassiveincome.com. Obviously, you can just click on the category under the Learn tab for whatever it is you want to learn, and you'll eventually make your way into a lot of our free content and, of course, our programs. Max, I don't know if you want an affiliate link for Power Up Podcasting, for example, which I imagine a lot of people are going to get excited about starting a show, and I want to make sure you get kickback for that, because it's so just great to have the opportunity to share this kind of stuff on your show, and I appreciate you for that. And I appreciate your kind words, too. I mean, I think that more of us need to dig our well before we're thirsty, if that makes sense. If you're digging your well and you're already thirsty, you're kind of too late. So that's kind of how I always approach things.
That's awesome stuff. So yeah, we will make sure to get a link. None of you are allowed to buy any of Pat's stuff unless it's through me. That's the new policy. I'm just kidding. You guys go to Pat's stuff. Go to Smart Passive Income. They have amazing stuff. We'll grab links from Pat as well if you want to go through us, but no pressure either way, because I know, again, about the giving thing, like the recommendation is going to help you so much. That next recommendation that we give you, you're going to be like, okay, that one worked out really well for me. So what else do you have to tell us about? So yeah, smartpassiveincome.com. Pat, it was great to catch up with you. I'm loving the beard, and just excited to chat with you. Hopefully we can do this again, and we'll see everyone next week on our next episode. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.